So welcome back to Thrive, your agency resource. This week, my guest is Mike Belasco, founder of Inflow, which is essentially just an e-commerce marketing agency out of Denver, Colorado. Mike and I met a couple of years back at SearchCon in Breckenridge, and it was actually at this year's conference that we got into a conversation, we reconnected, and he started telling me about this brand new approach that he's taking with his agency that he's sort of internally named the Harmonic Triangle. And of course, I was very interested and thought we've got to have him on the show. So Mike, thank you so much for making this happen today.
Thank you, Kelly. It's great to be here.
So let's kind of start with why you felt like you needed to make a change with the agency, how you looked at where you were going, how you felt about whether you were living your core purpose or not. Like, give me the perfect storm of what created all this in your mind.
Yeah, so, for a while we were on this trajectory as a really high growth agency. So, we were on the Inc. 5000 list 3 years in a row. We were on the Denver's fastest growing private company list 5 years in a row at one point. And, things generally were going pretty well from a business perspective. As we continued to get better and bigger, things didn't feel right. We were starting to make hires a lot quicker because we needed the staff to fulfill the work that we were selling. We were taking on more and more clients because we had this really aggressive, big, hairy, audacious goal that was based only on revenue. And so we were taking on clients that, maybe weren't the best people to work with, or again, that we just, or different team members didn't feel great about,
Right.
And I was starting to see, like, in some of the engagement surveys that we do with our staff every quarter, that people were like, it seems like we're just growing for growth's sake. Like, we know the goal is, X, Y, Z, X amount of dollars, but like, why, and even though we had a core purpose, a strategic vision, quarterly objectives and all that stuff.
All your OKRs, yeah.
OKRs, yeah, it just wasn't connecting for the team, and they were kind of just floating out there, without real purpose or vision. And so I just really started to reassess things personally and think about what I wanted as a business owner and why I had even started this place in the first place.
Right. So it was that the team was feeling sort of unmotivated. There wasn't a clear direction as to, where you were all rowing. Some of the stuff was stuck in your head, and they also felt like there was no real purpose behind it. Is that kind of encapsulating?
Yeah. And that, again, even for me personally, like, I knew where the revenue goal came from, like, mathematically, but at the same time, that's not the only reason I created Inflow. And I created it because I wanted to have a great place to go to work every day. And I know that sounds cliche.
No,
but
it doesn't.
no, okay, well, good.
Oh.
But what I've learned over the years is that to create that great place for me, it needs to be a great place for everyone else that works here.
You got it.
I started to try and figure out what my team needed. And again, that's kind of the roots of where a lot of this came from.
Right. So where did the concept of the harmonic triangle actually come from, and how does that framework work when it comes to how you restructure or envision the trajectory of Inflow?
Yeah, so where it came from was, at first looking at the stakeholders, right, that were represented by our goals and our vision. And again, coming from simply a revenue-based, big, hairy, audacious goal, the only stakeholder that was really being considered was the company or the investors, which is me. And that didn't make a lot of sense when I really started to look at it in hindsight. Like, how can we have three main stakeholders. We have certainly the company, the investors, and me. We have our team, and we have our clients. Those are the three main stakeholders. And so those were 3 points, which of course, is a triangle. So that's where the actual triangle came from. And then it was the concept of, like, we need to start with the team first, because if we can make sure that the team is happy, then in turn, they will, get great results and offer great service to our clients. And in turn, those clients will continue to expand their relationships with us to send us referrals, which of course makes the company and the investors happy, to achieve a certain profit margin, because at the end of the day, revenue does not matter. It's not money in the bank, if you will. And so, and of course, then that profit margin and that revenue enables the company to continue taking care of the team in a lot of ways that they need to be taken care of. So that's the general flow around. Is you'll see that our team is represented at the top, and that's conscious. And it starts with us taking care of the team, and kind of flows around the triangle from there.
Right. And so, when you look at this triangle and you look at where the different stakeholders are positioned, it almost seems to me like the only real difference, right, if we break it down really simplistically, is we used to have revenue and profit margin at the top. Clients were the ones who we were servicing, and we thought about the team sort of last. So if clients are still in that number 2 spot, if you will, all we're doing is we're essentially replacing or swapping the team, right? Sure. We're focusing on our people, who will then take care of the clients, and the clients will then feed into revenue and profitability. So it's really just kind of swapping number 1 and number 3, and clients sort of stay number 2. Is that fair?
Yeah,
and I know there's more to it than that, but I'm trying to break it down.
Make a specific order. It does tend to flow like that.
It's a flow. It's a flow.
Yeah, it's a flow, and then you have to look at the interrelationships. Like, what are the things that are going to make the team happy, right? So if we are putting them at the top of the triangle, let's just say, right, what are the things that are going to make the team happy? Well, certainly they need to get paid well and have good benefits and have a nice place to work and all that kind of stuff. But more importantly, they need to have great team members to work with, right? And so if we're rushing through a hiring process, or we're kind of waving off some red flags for someone and letting that into our triangle, into our ecosystem, that really affects the day-to-day lives of a lot of people that work here and their overall happiness. Same thing with clients. If we're taking on clients because it represents a great opportunity for us to increase our revenue and maybe our profit, but we're not, really, I guess, it's hard with clients, obviously, because you don't want to prejudge someone just on a few conversations in the sales process. But
you still have to qualify them. Right.
You still have to qualify them. And it's not to say that these weren't qualified. We specialize, as you mentioned, in e-commerce. So a lot of the clients that we're still bringing on, they were still e-commerce clients and all that. But sometimes, like, the motives didn't align, or we didn't make sure that, for example, even though the person that we were talking to was able to make a decision on hiring us or not, there were other stakeholders that we needed to get on board before we all agreed to move forward and work together. And so we weren't taking those kind of steps to making sure that the kind of clients that definitely affect, I don't want anyone dreading coming to work on any given day because they have to talk to or work with or work for some client. And unfortunately, that's what was happening. And that doesn't work. That disrupts the entire flow. It doesn't make the team happy, and therefore the triangle falls apart.
Right. All right. So you've sold me. It's not just an order. It's the nuances and actually what is in between, sort of if you're looking at that flow, right, that chart that we're going to have on the screen, it's the connection between, what comes first, second, third, or how that all, the interdependence or the interrelationship of those things.
Exactly.
All right. Yep. So you actually have just started implementing this not that long ago, and you've been getting some pretty early feedback that's been positive. Can you share sort of one of the stories or one of the anecdotes from your team?
Sure. I guess the first thing that comes to mind is just where we've had to make some tough decisions and tell clients, what? This isn't working out. It's not that we just gave up. We did our due diligence and we said, look, here's what's going on. Here's how we see things. Here's what we'll need to do to, continue moving forward, because we need this to work not only for you guys, but for us as well. And either we can get on the same page and move forward and things will be better, or we should just part ways, and so we have parted ways with a few clients. And
has that been amicable?
It's been amicable. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, there's no hard feelings or anything like that.
Do they understand why, or are they just thinking, oh, these guys don't want to work with us anymore?
I mean, it's hard to say, right? I mean, we're not in their heads. I think some of them definitely understand. It really is dependent on the situation.
Okay.
Well, what I can tell you though, is that the staff sees it and they see, wow, they really mean what they're saying. They're the leaders of Inflow. Right. They're taking huge risks in some cases that, are there. They're having really tough conversations. One of my managers, when we were talking about a potential client that we needed to kind of have a little bit of a talk with the client to try and work it out.
Come to Jesus moment.
Yeah, exactly. He said, I love that you let us do this, and I said, I don't let you do it. I require you to do it.
Yeah.
Because if we don't do it, the whole thing's not going to work.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. So along those lines with the team, how important is the mindset shift? And how do you measure those things? Because those are sort of the things that are the warm and fuzzies, and sometimes the more emotional or more, I don't know, just things that are hard to quantify. So how do you measure those things?
Well, I alluded earlier to the fact that we do quarterly engagement surveys, right? So we cover a wide variety of topics in that with our staff, and we have a lot of historical data and results, right? And so that is the best way that we found to quantify these things. We can really see trends there. Right now, what I will tell you is, again, we're about 35 people or so. So, going purely based on the numbers and the metrics can kind of be tough. Like we've seen trends where if you just look at the overall average score, if you will, honestly, it hasn't changed that much over the lifetime of doing these engagement surveys, no matter what we do, which is fine because it's a good score. But at the same time, it's not helpful feedback, right? There's no actionable feedback there. So the best thing that we have is the comments that come in as part of that survey. So rather than the numbers, looking at what people are really writing in their free form answers. That's one way that we can do this, collectively across the whole company. But you have to understand, we also have a lot of other things in place to facilitate good communication and feedback, right? Which is a core value of ours. And so, for example, we do weekly one-on-ones with every team member, every week. We use 15.5, and every team member submits and has a 15.5 report reviewed every week. We're very big on open, honest, frequent communication so that we can all continue to work together to improve. And that's something that's really important. So if you can't get on board with that or be a good communicator, you're probably not a good fit at Inflow.
Right. So the last time that we talked, we started going into, authenticity and vulnerability and all of these things, right? As an agency owner, it takes a lot of courage to be this authentic and to say, even though we're hitting our financial goals, something doesn't feel right. Those are the words that you used earlier on the show, right? So to say something is broken, and it doesn't feel right, and it has to do with my people and the way that they feel, even though I'm meeting my performance goals and my own revenue and all of those things as a private company. There's a lot of uncertainty and there's a lot of risk and emotional exposure in kind of going down this path as an agency owner. So I'm curious to know, what were some of the results or some of the outcomes of you showing your own vulnerability in this particular case?
Well, I mean, number one, for me, it felt good, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it just feels good to be authentic, to really live what I feel is the right thing to do, for the right reasons, and to continue to improve my own personal environment with, again, the clients that we have here and the staff that we have here. It's as you mentioned, it's still really early on. So specific results, like growth or even, more culture surveys and things like that, that's all still developing, but what I can tell you is, again, through those conversations, through the communication, through the feedback that I'm getting, that my managers are getting, that our team members are giving, it seems to be catching on and going well, and it makes sense. I mean, when you study this stuff and, for example, the book Culture Code was a really big influence and a really, really important read. That, that says, like, look, you've got to have this purpose. You've got to have this safety. Otherwise, you're never going to achieve, that good positive culture, that you want to get. So
Right.
I think the thing that I've also kept in mind is the obstacle is the way. And so while some things may be tough and some things may be uncomfortable or, put me in a vulnerable position, those difficulties will lead to better things down the road. And so it's just part of the journey. And I believe in it. And so I am, very confident that we will see results in terms of, number one, just our general happiness here in our jobs at Inflow, which again, I think will influence everything else from profit margins to client results to pretty much anything else out there you can think of.
Right. Well, I'll definitely put a link to Culture Code in the show notes for sure. And as we're starting to wrap up, what would you say is your biggest takeaway from a growth perspective up until this point?
Well, number one, high growth is not for everyone, right? I mean, I think like folks start up a business and it's like grow, and then all of a sudden, you're just kind of looking at dollar signs and that, to me, that's just not for me, right? It may be for somebody else, but it's not for me. So I think it's to really understand what you want and what's going to make you happy as an individual agency owner or business owner, and then try to craft your vision and mission for that agency around that. I suppose if it's really high growth and that's something you're really passionate about, that's great. But understand that there are costs to that, and there are compromises, I think, that sometimes need to be made that some people may be totally fine with, but others just aren't. And so my mission is really to achieve harmony among these three stakeholders at Inflow. And I'm really looking forward to, seeing what the results of those are. But, I would say to a business or, an aspiring agency owner or a current agency owner, yeah, I mean, you really have to look at that spectrum of, high growth versus lifestyle and really understand it and not just kind of brush off, oh yeah, it's hard to scale, or, you'll have to hire quick and all that kind of stuff. I think you really have to think hard and fast about it. Because again, you have to be very, very careful on the clients and the employees that you let in the door, because ultimately those are the main influencers.
That's the agency. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the agency.
I think achieving harmony amongst clients and your team and your bottom line, that sounds like a pretty worthwhile mission. So congratulations on everything you're doing with Inflow. And I'm just super excited that you're able to join me today. So thanks again, Mike.
Hey, I'm just glad someone's interested in hearing about this. So thank you.
Very, very interested. And I'm sure a lot of other people will be as well.
Good.
This episode has been brought to you by Workamajig, the #1 creative agency management software. Show notes at thrive.workamajig.com. Find out how your creative agency can become more productive and more profitable. Schedule your demo at thrive.workamajig.com.